We begin with the latest in the conflict in Gaza, where it's been reported that the US has carried out its first airdrop of aid for the territory. Thousands of meals have been parachuted in by 3 military planes. That follows a pledge on Friday by President Biden. Meanwhile, Egyptian sources say talks on trying to secure a ceasefire in Gaza are due to resume in Cairo on Sunday. It's understood there has been some progress, but the violence has been continuing. At least 13 Palestinians, including a medic, are reported to have been killed by an Israeli airstrike near a hospital. And a United Nations team visiting Gaza's biggest hospital has found that many Palestinians who were injured as lorries were delivering aid on Thursday were wounded by gunshots. American officials have confirmed that the US military has carried out its first airdrop of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Let's take a look at these pictures here. You can see US military planes flying over Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip. American officials say over 35,000 meals were dropped by parachute. It comes after a promise by President Biden on Friday, following the deaths of 112 Palestinians during a rush on an aid convoy on Thursday. Let's get more on this now from our Washington correspondent, Will Vernon. Will, good to see you. Good morning to you there in DC. Tell us more about what US officials have been saying.
Well, that's right. We received a statement from the US military saying that this first airdrop has been carried out. That was done in coordination together with the Jordanian Air Force, some C-130 aircraft dropping over 38,000 meals along the coastline of Gaza, say the US military. Now, this will not be the first. This will be part of an ongoing mission. There's expected to be many of these. US officials say Israel is supportive of the mission, and it's being carefully planned to ensure that there aren't any civilian casualties on the ground, because this is a very complex, this is in fact actually a very inefficient way of delivering aid. Getting aid in by trucks via land routes is actually much simpler and much more efficient. So I think the fact that the US has opted for this method not only shows how serious the humanitarian crisis is in Gaza, but it also, I think, shows that the US wants to send a message that more aid needs to get in by land. And indeed, in that statement from the US military today, it says these airdrops are part of a sustained effort to get more aid into Gaza, including by expanding the flow of aid through land corridors and routes.
Well, I want to pick up on what you mentioned there, this slight nuanced shift in the US position, because America has been supportive, generally speaking, of Israeli activity, but this is a change in tone, and this promise by President Biden on Friday was a shift in that US position. What's the trajectory of this, do you think?
That's right. I mean, we've been hearing a kind of increasing tone of exasperation, I think, from President Biden, from other White House officials in recent weeks. Recently, President Biden said he thought Israel's military operation in Gaza was over the top. Recently, he said that the Rafah, Israel's plans to launch an offensive into the Gazan city of Rafah shouldn't go ahead unless careful planning took place to ensure that no civilian casualties, that there were no civilian casualties. And also yesterday, during President Biden's meeting with the Italian Prime Minister, we saw him say that only a handful of aid trucks were getting in, whereas it should be, much more than that. So I think, there has been some frustration. But also remember, it is an election year here, a particularly closely fought election campaign, particularly polarizing, at least it's shaping up to be that way. And Israel-Gaza is becoming an election issue here. And President Biden has to walk a very tricky tightrope. On the one hand, he has to ensure that the US is supporting a key ally, Israel. On the other hand, he has to make sure he's not alienating progressives in his own party, also putting off traditional voters. And we saw that a few days ago in the state of Michigan when a Democrat primary election was held there. Over 100,000 people in Michigan actually voted uncommitted. So most of those were a protest vote against President Biden for his support of Israel. Of course, the US hasn't called for an immediate ceasefire like many people. Many of those voters in Michigan, for example, would like President Biden to. So that, I think, was a stark warning and a concerning I think, sign for the White House, for the Biden campaign, that come November, this could become a problem among key voters in those crucial swing states such as Michigan.
OK, Will, very good to get that take from you. Will Vernon in Washington, thank you.